This afternoon. Still good? It's such an honor to be here. So thank you so much, Segan, and everybody that put this conference together for inviting me out here. It's such a treat to be in Iceland. This is my first time here, and absolutely loving your country so far. Again, my name is Laura Kornhauser. I'm the co-founder and president of Stratify. We are a prescriptive analytics company that sells to businesses. We have innovative technology that deploys machine learning in a really cool way that helps companies make better data-driven decisions. Very happy to chat with anybody about that afterwards or during the Q&A, should anybody be interested in that. So just to give you a little overview of how I'm going to run through my talk, I'm going to tell you all a little bit about my career to date, go through some big decisions that I've made throughout my career, and then hopefully share with you some of the lessons I've learned along the way. My plan is to leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A, so feel free to ask me anything that's on your mind, and if you see another question in there that's also on your mind, like it so it gets to the top. So first, I'll tell you all a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm co-founder of Stratify. I graduated from Columbia Business School this past May, 2017. Before going to Columbia Business School full-time, I was an executive director at JP Morgan, where I spent 12 years working within the investment bank in various front office roles that I'll talk about a little bit later. Graduated from Princeton University in 2003. I was an engineer there. I am the daughter of two entrepreneurs. One, my fantastic mother, Catherine, is sitting in the front here. She's a software engineer herself and a role model for me in every single way possible, so it's such an honor to have her here with me. I think she's probably pretty excited to have me on a stage like this in front of all of you lovely ladies. I am an avid Pittsburgh Penguins fan. For those of you that don't follow the National Hockey League, they are an ice hockey team based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where my father grew up. I played ice hockey my entire life. I still play a little bit now on my brother's pond, not competitively, but played through college. Played with the boys for most of my childhood, so I'd like to think that that gave me a little bit of toughness along the way. I live in New York City and have a small terrace off my apartment where I try to grow everything possible that will ever grow in New York City and actually have quite a bit of success. My mom's very helpful in getting me started every spring, and because we thankfully have no predators on terraces on the 12th floor in New York City, my plants grow actually perfectly. And I'm a big lover of all things 80s, music and movies, most predominantly, but really love the entire decade and everything it has to offer. So now that you all know a little bit about me, I'd love to learn a little bit about you and also get everybody out of their chairs a bit, hopefully. So just so I get a little sense of who's in the room, can everybody please stand up if you are an engineer? Okay. Anybody interested in finance or working in finance, join the engineers. Wonderful. And again, where are my entrepreneurs in the group? Not that you may not already be standing, because a lot of these things have overlap. Entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs? Got it. Who is in the creative arts in some form of design, marketing, PR? Wonderful, wonderful. Who has absolutely no idea what they want to be with when they grow up, but is currently doing some job? Okay. Everybody else, we got lawyers out there. What are you right here? Master's student. Okay, yeah, where are my students? Good point. Where are my students? Great. Who's still sitting? You right here in the front. Who do I have here? Hi. Hi, Humberg. Oh, wonderful. Yes, of course, government and our public servants. Anybody else, shout it out if I still have you seated. I apologize that I have not mentioned your industry yet. Pharma, absolutely. Pharma, stand up. Pharma, stand up. All my medical professionals, stand up. Ladies in the middle table, why don't I have you yet? What are you all doing these days? Teachers, absolutely. Our teachers, our educators, please stand up. Great. Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, what is that? Researchers, absolutely, researchers. Iceland has such a great tradition of biomedical research. You sitting over here. Oh, absolutely, come on up. Join us. Okay, great. And you two ladies, I think you may be the last ones I haven't. Human resources, making sure people operations, making sure everybody's happy. Great. Okay, wonderful. So as you all can see, we have a very diverse room here with people with careers and backgrounds and all sorts of things. Thank you so much for all sitting up. You may all sit down. Throughout my chat, I'll try to talk as much as possible about things that I've learned that hopefully are applicable to any field, not just finance or entrepreneurship or engineering, hopefully a lot in between. So, as I mentioned in that lovely walkthrough we just did, I mentioned all those people that had no idea what they wanted to be when they grew up. That was me when I was a senior in college. I studied operations research and financial engineering at Princeton. I was coming into my senior year. I had actually grown up in the town of Princeton, so during all of my summers during college, I went abroad. I studied abroad. I tried to get really out there, get out of that little bubble that I had been. So it meant that I went into my senior year of college having not a great idea of what I wanted to be when I grew up. All these big companies were coming on campus, presenting to us, talking about these great training programs they had, analyst programs, etc. I went to every single one of them and got roped into the finance track. I was given an offer by JP Morgan. It was a fantastic offer, a wonderful job in investment banking as part of their analyst program. And I was given all of 2 weeks to let them know if a yes or no decision before that offer, as they like to say in the States, exploded, which is a very weird phrase, but that's what they call it. And I was weighing all the pros and cons. Everybody that I had known that had graduated in years before me and gone into banking was pretty miserable. But I also knew that it was a fantastic job opportunity. I would learn a lot. I would get trained really well, and really thought that it wasn't something that I could pass up. So I took that job and started working at JP Morgan. About a year into my time at JP Morgan, I realized that I wasn't happy in my role in investment banking. A very good friend of mine from undergrad was working on JP Morgan's trading floor. And she said, Laura, there's a position that has opened up in derivative sales. You're a real big nerd, and I know that, so you can do derivatives. And I've always thought you'd be great at sales, so why don't you go for this job? And I thought to myself, I've only been in banking for a year. That's not enough. You're supposed to do at least 2 years. It's not the time for me to move yet. I'll look like I'm just hopping ship before I've really sunk my teeth into this job. So what did I do to get advice? In addition to turning to people like my mother, I called up Constance and Liz. Constance and Liz were 2 senior bankers that had recruited me to the firm. They both went to Princeton and then were in very senior positions at JP Morgan, had brought me into the firm, and I called them on a Saturday morning, actually sent them an email on a Saturday morning. They immediately called me back, both of them on the phone. These are 2, again, very senior ladies. And they spent about 2 hours on the phone with me weighing the pros and cons between the 2 different job opportunities. And actually, in the end, ultimately recommended that I make the move over to derivative sales, even though I was moving out of their purview, out of their area, and in many ways was kind of giving them a little bit of a bad mark on their name because I wasn't staying for 2 years. They knew it was best for me. They knew it was a great opportunity. They used their network to help evaluate the opportunity. They found out things about my boss. Was he going to be a good person to work with? Who was I going to be partnered with on the desk? They vetted that all out for me using their own connections and really helped me make that move with complete confidence. So that really taught me the importance of mentors and sponsors. As I'm sure everybody in this room knows, they're different things, right? But they're both equally important, and they both have the common goal of trying to help you achieve your career aspirations. Pretty awesome when you think about it. Typically more senior people that really want to help you succeed. Who wouldn't want like a lot of those, right? Mentors are very important because they're the people you can actually go to and be raw and honest with and tell them how you're really thinking. Sponsors, you want them to be your advocates. You want to always make sure you're giving your best foot forward to your sponsors. You're telling them all the great things you're doing, all the ways you're helping your business grow, all the ways you're helping your team succeed. And then those sponsors can help pull the strings behind the scenes for you to get you up for that promotion, to get you that great new opportunity at the new office, to get that stretch opportunity that you might not even know is there. So again, importance of mentors and sponsors is huge. Then I moved over to the derivatives desk. I was on a trading floor. I am not a stock market junkie at all. Like, I don't care about the stock market. Never did when I was growing up. I learned a lot about it during college, but it was not in my gut. And I was on a floor with all these people where it was in their gut. They loved it. They loved it. And there was so much to learn, and everything was going so fast-paced. And if you made a mistake, it was costly. Costly to the firm and costly to you personally. And I was sitting there saying, how the heck am I going to drink out of this fire hose? How am I going to learn these skills? I didn't go through the training program now, so I didn't have that stepping stone into the job that I did in banking. So what did I decide to do? I really focused on trying to take every year and acquire new skills. So at the start of the year, I would sit down with my boss and I would say, okay, for this year, what are we focusing on? What's going to help me grow? How can I get out of my comfort zone? How can I really acquire new skills, make new connections, and help deepen and grow my network within the firm? And I really tried to stay, again, there were good years and bad years when I actually achieved all the goals and some where I perhaps didn't, but tried to stay true to that every year and tried to break what seemed like an insurmountable amount of stuff into little bite-sized chunks that I could take at a time. And I felt accomplishment because I was doing it. It didn't seem so overwhelming to me now. It really just helped me get integrated into the trading floor environment and make that switch from banking. Then the financial crisis hit. I had been on the trading floor for about 4-ish years at that time, and things got bad. At JP Morgan, it was extra bad because we had a merger with Bear Stearns in March of 2008. So about 6 months before everything really hit the fan and Lehman went under, we basically had another company of the same size merging with ours. It was stressful, to say the least. Going into work every day was challenging. And then one day I came into work and layoffs had happened. And the person to my left, to my right, and the 3 people that sat behind me, because in trading floors you sit literally this close to each other and there's someone sitting right behind you. 3 people sat behind me, all got fired in one day. I spent most of the mornings going down to meet one of my friends who had gotten let go and trying to console her, going to the bathroom myself for a quick cry every now and then. It was one of the sadder days of my career. And unfortunately, that was just the start of things. That was March of 2008, and then for the rest of 2008 and 2009, any given day could be a layoff day. And that really taught me a very valuable and hard lesson that, of course, jobs are important, but they aren't everything. And I saw how much my coworkers that really had centered their entire life around their career and then had something like this happen, even though they were absolutely wonderful people, wonderful employees, super skilled, super intelligent. They just got unlucky. Their number just came up. And then they were left in really bad positions because they hadn't built up the rest of their life to kind of match their career. And they were left a little lopsided afterwards. So again, jobs, extraordinarily important, as everybody says, but they are way, way, way far from everything. Then it finally became time for me to take a new leap. I started that new leap in 2009 when I took the GMAT. After the financial crisis, when everybody was having all of these bad situations happen and finance seemed so unfair to me, I decided I wanted to create some optionality for me. I had always thought I would go to business school or to get a graduate degree. I'd always thought if I could really figure out what I wanted to get a graduate degree, I wouldn't go to business school, but whatever. I decided that business school was probably the path for me, and I took the GMAT that year. I decided not to go to business school at that time in 2009 because I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I still didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. And I didn't want to go take 2 years off from a job that, again, was by all means or by all measures a really great job, to not know exactly where I was going, to not know exactly what I was going to get out of those 2 years. So as a result, I spent another 4 years at JP Morgan. And, if I had to do it all over again, while they were great years, I think 4 years was too long. I think I waited too long before I made that step that I knew I wanted to make. But thankfully, because GMAT scores expire in 5 years, I finally did decide to make that step right before that good old GMAT score expired, and I applied to business school. I was accepted into Columbia's business school and decided to go there because I really, though I thought I wanted to leave Manhattan, when the idea of actually leaving Manhattan came, I had like panic attacks or something. So decided to go to Columbia for my MBA. I left my actual job at JP Morgan 3 years ago, almost to the day, and went immediately to Vegas for the weekend with my family to celebrate. And spent some time traveling with my mom afterwards before starting school, which was really wonderful. And then I spent 2 years doing a full-time MBA. At 33, not your average path. Most students were 7-ish years younger than I was. I was really nervous about that going in, really nervous about kind of being the grandma in the room. And really what I went, right, I actually started off my Columbia Business School experience with a weekend at the Hamptons that went awfully wrong. And I thought that I had made a really bad mistake because I wasn't 26 years old anymore and I didn't want to just party all the time. But then when I actually got to business school, I knew it was the perfect place for me. And that's really where I get to this lesson of don't be afraid to take the leap when you're ready. And for me, I think I was ready a little bit before I took the leap, but I was scared to take the leap. And when I finally did, it was the greatest thing ever. I absolutely adored going to business school. Having the opportunity to go back and further my education, I think it's one of the great treats in this world for those of us in the room that have the opportunity or those that will in the future. I think getting an education is one of the best things you can spend your time doing, and building yourself is one of the greatest pursuits that you can ever go after. So I feel really lucky and fortunate that I had so many people supporting me to make that big leap. I'd been 12 years at JP Morgan, and I just quit. People thought I was crazy. Like, people thought I was nuts. And it was to go back to business. I mean, I literally had a conversation with my boss where she said, "You realize we hire people out of business school for the job you had 8 years ago?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do. I'm not coming back." And here I get to my next point. It's never too late to learn new things. Again, I was surrounded by people way my junior, a more arrogant person may think, what the heck do I have to learn for them? I learned so much. Age does not define what you have to give in any kind of setting, and definitely in a school setting. I met so many people from such diverse backgrounds that had such interesting jobs, and it just widened my whole lens about what was out there. I'd gotten so narrow about finance. If I want to be successful, I have to be in finance. And nothing could be further from the truth. And having the opportunity to go back to school just let me widen up that lens again and recognize there's so many amazing things out there to do, and really just try to find the thing that you're passionate about, that you really get excited waking up to go do. That gets me to where I am now. So during my second year of Columbia Business School, I co-founded Stratify with 3 other engineers, one of which was a good friend of mine at business school. It's 3 other men, so unfortunately I'm still kind of in an all-men's circle, at least for now, until I hire some of you to come over to New York and be my engineers. But when I made that leap, right, I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had always wanted to follow in my parents' footsteps, but I never really knew what that idea that I should really go after was. And I thought, oh, I've got an entrepreneurial spirit, but doesn't everybody? Truth is, not everybody does, but anyway. And, I didn't want to just start any old company. I wanted to find the right company to start. So when my friend Michael approached me about the idea that became Stratify, we had a really cool technology. It was basically, it's machine learning technology, which, let's be honest, is basically statistics on steroids, which is what I studied in undergrad. I saw all these great applications for it, not the least of which was in financial services, which is where we're starting selling our product. But I was ready to take that leap, that big old leap, away from the traditional path of, finance or other post-MBA careers to start my company because the mix was right. The team was right, the idea was right, the technology was right, the opportunity was right. So I took that risk, but it was a calculated risk. And before I took that risk, I tested that hypothesis. I tested it really well. I worked on my own startup with Segan during my first year of business school. I interned at a variety of different startups in different spaces, at companies of different stages. I worked in venture capital. I did all of this to test the hypothesis that I actually wanted to go into entrepreneurship. Because again, I didn't just want to be another finance person that got sick of finance and wanted to move to something cool like tech or entrepreneurship, like so many people do. Turns out that's what I did, but hey. And then the last and perhaps the most important lesson, which echoes a lot of what Paula said as well, trust yourself and just go for it. Go for it. I used to be petrified of failure, like petrified. And it's a paralyzing feeling, right? And especially if you've always been a big achiever in your life, if you've always done well, in my opinion, it only makes failure more challenging to deal with, right? And it's extraordinarily to your personal growth, your self-confidence, your career growth to be so afraid of failure. One speaker we had in business school used this phrase that, while a little cheesy, I really do enjoy. She said that you should try to fail forward. So fail forward. So what does that mean to me? That means that, okay, you take the calculated risk. You're not just throwing stuff at the wall. You take the calculated risk, but when you find the right risk, you trust yourself, you go for it. And if you fail, who cares? People fail all the time. The important thing is to learn from that failure. If you fail and you don't learn from it, then it's a real shame. But if you don't do something right, who cares? You learn from it, you do it better the next time. One, it makes you a better, employee. Two, if you can actually do this as a leader of an organization, it makes you a lot better leader and it gets a lot better productivity out of your teams. So if I can leave you with one thing, it would definitely be to try to whenever possible, fail forward. So with that, I would love to open the floor up for any questions. Thank you. Great. Okay, I'll start with Anna's. Your career is extremely impressive. What would you say the key is to thriving in a male-dominant environment like JP Morgan? So first of all, Anna, thank you so much. Very kind to say. Great question. I was definitely throughout my career, especially at JP Morgan, an extraordinarily male-dominated environment. I say that not just because it was mainly males, right? Also, all of my clients were predominantly males as well. I can't tell you the number of times I went into a conference room, 10 people, and you're the only woman. That was very normal in many ways. And also, it's a very quintessential male kind of environment as well. That last part never bothered me whatsoever because I'm kind of, I don't know, I can hang in those environments no problem and actually always kind of like them, similar to what Paula mentioned earlier. But, the first two, those were definitely challenges. I always like to try to think that I could use it as my advantage. One nice thing about being the only woman in an entire room of males is you do stand out. And, in my opinion, you can use that opportunity, standing out, as a platform for you to do stuff, as a platform for you to be heard. Don't let that be the thing that keeps you from speaking up. Have that be the thing that empowers you to speak up. I think that the more you can take the opportunity when you are in those lopsided gender situations to use your gender as an advantage, to recognize what you bring to the table that all the men may not bring to the table, and really bring those skills out, I think it can actually be a secret weapon in many ways. So going on to, do you think going from one job to another every 5 to 10 years is a good thing for your career? So I'll say that with maybe. So there are a lot of people out there right now that think you're supposed to go between jobs every 2 to 3 years. I remember I interviewed for one startup with the founder, and they looked at my resume and said, "You're crazy. I would never stay at a job for more than 3 years." And to me, that was a huge red flag and made me not interested in the company anymore. I think that working for the same company for a long period of time, if it's a company where you're valued, if it's a company where you have good managers, if it's a company where you're getting promoted and you're getting opportunities, sure, that's wonderful. If it's a company where you can actually grow your career and your career can move forward, I think that's absolutely amazing. Again, making sure that you're staying focused on learning new skills, building your resume, making sure that you are really growing, that you're not getting stagnant and stale in a given position, because that is obviously no bueno. But yeah, if you're still learning new things, if you're still growing and the company values you, absolutely, I think it's fine to stay there for 5 or 10 years. Now, if that's not the case, you get the heck out of there. You get the heck out of there and you find some place where you're actually valued, or you go do it yourself. And, I think that the one thing I will say is, if you have a bunch of one-year stints on your resume, I don't think that looks great. So make sure you have at least a couple places that you stay at for 2 or more years in your resume. But if you've done that already and then you go to a new job and you're not valued properly, get the heck out of there. You don't need to stay for longer. How do you get sponsors and mentor? Fantastic question. It's not always easy. And many times you find mentors, and a lot of times sponsors kind of find you, or at least that's been the way my career has gone. I think you can't underestimate the power of asking someone, maybe not to be your mentor, but to sit down and get coffee with you. You are going through, you really are impressed by someone's career, and you'd love to sit down with him or her to learn more about how they got to where they are. People love talking about themselves, okay? You can never underestimate that. People love being called experts. People love being said how great their career is, and I just want to learn how you did all this. That's the best way to ever get someone super senior to throw their guard down and come meet with you. So feel free to reach out to those people. You see someone speak at an event, you see someone write something that you think is really impressive, shoot them an email, get them on Twitter. Find them and ask them to get coffee with you. You'd be amazed by the response you get. On the sponsor side, I think it can be a little harder to actually kind of go out and find those people. Oftentimes they find you. But I would say you still need to cultivate those relationships. So when you're interacting with more senior people, if you notice that there are certain ones that seem to be taking an interest in you, there's certain ones that seem to like your work, there's certain ones that say nice things about you, that's your sponsor. That's your sponsor, okay? Now, cultivate that relationship. What do I mean by that? Reach out to that person too. Get coffee with him or her as well. But instead of asking them for advices about the challenges that you're facing in your career in those coffees, you're talking about all the wonderful things that you're doing for your business and how you're such a rock star. You're selling yourself in those meetings with the sponsors. Okay, we have the tendency to sell ourselves short when negotiating salaries. Oh, so true. What are your recommendations for us next time we salary talks with your bonuses? Ooh. Good one as well. So I'll share one quick story with you on this front of when I did this extraordinarily poorly. So it was 2 years into my job on the trading floor at JP Morgan. I was doing very, very well. They all really liked me, yada, yada. So I knew I was going to get a great review at the end of the year. So I sat down with my boss, Dave. And as many of you may know in finance, year-end bonuses are a very big thing. They can be very large sums of money. So I sat down with my boss, Dave, and Dave said, Laura, you're really killing it this year. This is your first full year on the desk. Your bonus is coming up. What do you want for your bonus? I was underprepared for that conversation. I didn't think he was going to ask me that question, and I totally flubbed it. And I said a number, and then he gave me 5% more than that number as my bonus. That's how I know my number was not even, actually it was 10% more than the number. My number was not even the right zip code. I left so much money on the table by not being prepared for that discussion, by not knowing what my other felt. I always thought, you're not supposed to ask people what you make. And at JP Morgan, it was absolutely, it was in our code of conduct that you actually weren't allowed to do that. So I never did any of that. So I had I'd done no market research on what I deserved to be paid, what my worth was on the street, as they say. And as a result, I undershot myself so much. So this is a huge problem. It's a problem when going for women, broadly speaking. It's a problem when it's a problem not only when negotiating salaries, but when applying for jobs. So everybody's probably heard the old adage that women apply for a job when they're 120% qualified, and men apply for a job when they're 20% qualified. I think that potentially is a little bit of an overstatement, but I think it's definitely definitely happens. And I think that way too often women, again, we're using broad stroking terms, but women undersell their past experiences and undersell how applicable they are to a wide variety of things. Never forget that what you may have done before, while not exactly what you'd be doing in the new job, you can sell that. You can sell that. So much of what you do in any job, you learn on the job anyway. So first and foremost, I would say go for those jobs that are stretches for you. Go for those jobs where you don't actually, all the requirements, you got like half of them. Go for it. See what it happens. If it's a job you really like, don't let that ever deter you. And when going into salary negotiations, I think it's just really important to know what your market worth is. Know what you would be getting paid if you did your job somewhere else. You have to have that market intel. You have to know what you're worth, and you have to demand to get what you're worth, because it will not be given to you otherwise. It's just the sad reality, unfortunately, especially when it comes to compensation. So thank you so much for the time. This is me and my co-founding team in our office. And please feel free to reach out, everyone, if you have any other questions or want to talk about anything. Again, such an honor to be here, and thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you again, Laura, for being with us here today. Þetta var gott.